and welcome to another season of Kids Korner. I'm your host, Ryan Maliar. Today we have a very interesting show for you. By show of hands, how many of you watch cartoons? Wow, that's a lot. Now, our guest today works on cartoons and animations by doing the sound engineering and designing. Marc Bazerman has been working for Pullman Sound Company for the past 13 years. He's going to explain to us how sound is done in cartoons and how exactly sound is designed. Please help me welcome Marc to the show. So Marc, how did you get interested in the field?
When I was at school learning about recording, wanted to be a music engineer. Then there was a course that we did sound for picture. And once we started doing that, I fell in love with it. Just that you can create new worlds from where nothing exists.
Did you have any jobs before this?
Not in sound, except used to do recording in my parents' basement. We had a studio where I recorded my band and friends' bands.
How did you get into recording sound for animation specifically?
Where I was working, we were doing sound for commercials, radio and TV, and we decided that we want to do more long format. And something that interested myself and the owner of the company was animation. We were all in love with cartoons as kids, so we thought it'd be fun to do that for a living.
Is it complicated to learn?
A little bit, but it's really a sensibility that you learn what sounds to put where and timings and what parts of sounds to use.
Did you take any classes to learn how to do this?
Only when I was at school, but they don't really have some classes for cartoons per se. It's kind of, we learned it as we were going.
How do you design the sound?
Well, what happens in the beginning when we start a new cartoon, we get storyboards from the producers of the show, and we sit through it and talk about what their ideas are for the sound of it and what our ideas are, and just really think what's their world, what are they living in, and what can we do to enhance it and accentuate the feelings of the moment. Couldn't get that out.
What kind of equipment do you use to make the sounds and record them?
Nowadays, it's all computer-based. It's all digital audio workstations, and also we use a lot of samplers to manipulate the sound. Samplers are digital audio recorders that will record a small section of sound, and in there, we can then reverse it, change the filters of the sound, so it can just take the sound and what you might think is someone running can now be transferred to something else. You can make it lower sounding or higher pitch, play faster, play in reverse, and then on the keyboard you can play up and down the scale, and at the same time you can combine them and make it a whole new sound.
Is there ever a time where you have to make new sounds that you don't already have recorded?
Yeah, that's called Foley. And what happens is we'll have the picture set up, and a lot of footsteps are done that way, and it's something that's not in the sound effects library, and one person will be recording it and the other person will be in the Foley booth watching the picture and mimicking everything that's happening on screen.
What steps are there in seeing a cartoon from the beginning all the way to completion?
There's about 4 or 5 steps from going back to when they write the script. It starts off after they have the idea, the writers take it and write it out. It will go through various revisions, and then a storyboard artist or artists will then draw it out and then think about not just the dialogue, but how much time has to happen in between for any action. So they'll time it out and then draw out every frame. For say, a half-hour cartoon is 22 minutes long. So it's a lot of drawing to get done. Then after that, they'll come into our studio and record the voices. Then after that, it gets sent out to, a lot of animation is drawn in Korea. So it gets sent to Korea, or it will be done in-house at the animation studio. And that takes about 3 or 4 months to do. It's a lot of drawing, especially with the old-style cell animation, where everything's by hand. Then it will come back to us about 3 or 4 months later, and that's when we start our next process, which is the viewing, going through what we call spotting the show, looking for what sound effects are needed, and then we'll start putting the sound effects into the show. there's usually, once we have it, it's about a week turnaround to the show. And then as we're doing the sound effects, the music house is working on the music. And then hopefully on time they send us the music and we'll add that into and then start the mix process.